Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, coming at you live to talk about episode 2 of ClassicaLoid Season 2. And once again, they knocked it out of the park. The thing that really got me by the lapels in the opening is very much the opening. It's the original first season OP music. And I had been sort of kind of fearful, like, how are they ever going to top that? Expecting, as, more traditionally is known to happen, with anime, they come back with a second season, they come back with a brand new OP and everything like that. And but no, the animation in the OP was brand new, but it was the first season OP music, and it just got me stoked. They really can't outdo that as far as I'm concerned, and it just got my juices pumping as soon as you heard that ba-da-bum, 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 ba-da-bum. I freaking love it. I love the guitar riff that's in there and everything. The only thing I was kind of lamenting was I missed that shot of Beethoven in the first season OP where he's got the guitar, and it's almost as though he's playing that riff. But I loved it. I loved hearing that music again. And this was really interesting because of the real world implications to do with Richard Wagner and, his sort of looking toward Beethoven and how there's going to be this rivalry in the anime, at least, which again is very much resoundingly to do with the fact that Beats and Moats had to give up their rooms respectively for, Wakun and his pet, hippo Dvorak and everything. And so, it's Beethoven's right to sort of cast out, let's challenge each other and see who is the victor, and to the victor goes the spoils. Whoever wins the day gets the room back. And of course, it's not going to quite go the way he hopes. I felt really bad for Beethoven throughout the episode because Kanai is constantly stacking the chips in Wakun's favor, and it's kind of unfair, I think. Especially as he's a little jerk face. He's got his whole, backlog of a chip on his shoulder and being demeaning and disrespectful to the other classicaloids. But of course, as one could assume, he is a classicaloid. He acknowledges this, in an internal monologue sequence in this episode. And he really is prideful to the effect that when, basically Beethoven says, you're like botched gyoza, you're no good, that kind of thing, you're imperfect. He takes it personally. He takes it nuclear personally to the effect that he was a botched attempt at creating a classicaloid. So he is, that's where that chip, on his shoulder was born. That burden for him to bear is that he is lesser than what the other classicaloids turned out to be. At least that's the estimation, And I don't know if it was Kanai's father or another scientist or something like that had told him that, but per his visual flashback, we see that somebody had basically said, you were a botched attempt. You were a poor mixture. You were a poor outcome of what we were trying to accomplish. And so whereas he was completely willing to dismiss Beethoven's, challenging him at first, when that entered the fray, when that terminology entered the fray, it really struck a chord with him, and suddenly he's like taking Beethoven to task. Yeah, we're gonna throw down now. Now that you opened your mouth and inserted the boot, let's go to town. And so Kanai is very interestingly sort of the judge over all of this, and like I said, she stacks the chips in Wakun's favor time and time again. But it was interesting. I loved, as a fan of the classic novel Tom Sawyer, you see Wakun almost pulling that Tom Sawyer-esque, sort of trying to persuade, in this case, Chopin, to paint the wall for him when they're painting the, surrounding wall that surrounds the property of the manor house. And he's all complimentary to Chopin, so Chopin will do that much more of the work. And Liz is right there to catch him on it, just as she was in the first episode. She's the only one who actually picks up on his being a smarmy little brat and everything. And I love how somebody pointed out to me in the comments of the first episode discussion video for season 2 that this is something that has real world implications, because the real world Liz, Richard Wagner had married her daughter Cosima, which it kind of gives her, like, as the commenter put it, a bone to pick with Wakun. So it's really awesome that she is the one pinioned against him, like observing him and noting what he is doing when he's trying to persuade people or influence them, like he did negatively Schubert in the first episode. And like, where was Schubert? I don't think he was in this episode now that I think of it, which I hadn't even noticed. It hadn't even occurred to me until now. But I did catch in the OP. I was more scrutinizing to the OP, like watched it twice, whereas we didn't actually have the OP in the first episode. But there are shots of Schubert in a sort of Rastafarian like guise, and it makes me really excited for the aspect that maybe he will transition from hip-hop to maybe reggae. I'm a big Bob Marley fan and everything, and so that would be awesome if we start to get a little reggae mixing and matching up with the classical music and everything like that, and maybe he'll have a change of tack along those lines. I don't know. I don't know if that's what, the OP is tipping the hat toward, but I would freaking love that. But as I say, I love the sort of, we're dealing with classical composers and things like that. And I like that classical literature in the case of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is something that comes into play with the way Wakun is, in trying to schmooze somebody to do some of the paintwork for him and that kind of thing. And of course, Beats in that moment had Mozart, air quotes, helping him, creating like a rainbow colored collage on the wall and everything, completely just dismantling any hope Beats had. And then I almost lost it when he ends up reconfiguring his flamethrower thing. It looks like a backpack out of Ghostbusters, with the slime thrower in Ghostbusters too. But he ends up using it as like a water cannon to answer to Kanai's wanting them to clean up the walkway path in front of the manor house. And he just nuclear launches this water and gets everybody soaked. It does the job, but because it like attacked everybody at the same time, left them all wet and practically almost drowned in on the sidewalk, on the walking path. Kanai's like, that was almost tantamount to cheating, So it's like I said, with the chips, stacked in Wakun's favor, I felt so bad for Beats because he just wants his room back. He doesn't want to have to. I laughed out loud when we see what he's dealing with Moats. Moats is queefing in his face, farting in his face, every opportunity. Yes. And I almost lost it with that. Like, I have a, he's like, asleep. And he's like, I have a great present for you. Oh, man. And then he does it again later on in the episode. But that's one of the things I really loved is when they finally got to the third challenge, which was go and get these groceries. And Kanai, again, stacking the chips in Wakun's favor, gives him one thing to get, eggs. And then a whole laundry list of things Beethoven has to get. So that when he just arrives on the scene of the shopping center, friggin' Wakun's already done with the shopping. But then we see, Liz and Chopin and Moats, they all come in and they've done the work for Beats to help him out because they realize it's unfair, and they realize this kid, I think it's Liz that says something like, he shouldn't be getting all of the attention, the leg up all the time like this. It's going to get old. It's going to get static and boring. And I almost don't half wonder if that was like the story group putting that dialogue in there to say, we know, we're not going to keep playing him up like this. Just bear with us a little longer. This is the last time. And it was really freaking awesome, like the scene where they're going to be racing back to the manor house. I wore this Flash shirt because if you look at the truck that passes, right when Beats decides, okay, he's going to hightail it and catch up with Wakun after Wakun's making his way home, the truck that passes in front of Beats has a symbol that's almost like the Flash symbol. And as soon as that truck passes, Beats takes off running. And so it's like a race of the Flashes. If you go back to classic DC comics where you had the Golden Age Flash versus the Modern Age Flash or the Silver Age, whatever it is, Jay Garrick versus Barry Allen. And I got that vibe after seeing that symbol on the truck. I'm like, oh crap, these two composers, these two eloquent musical geniuses in a sense, one who followed the other and was sort of looking very much, had held the other up on a pedestal, and now they're competing. Now there's a rivalry between them. And this is going to be a season-long rivalry, it seems like, by the end of the episode especially, because once they get back to the manor house, and Beethoven has, for all intents and purposes, won. Wakun, again, being the smarmy little brat he is, he cracked the eggs, smashed them by running into Beethoven, Beats, to win, effectively, to wink, wink, nudge, nudge, a win out of Kanai. And then, of course, we have brand new music that debuts from, Beethoven in that moment, which it's a song, according to Padkun, that was something that really strongly, affected Wakun, in his former life. And the flashback seems to denote this as well. He's ushering forth tears, and some of his dialogue subsequent to that is, "Oh, you thought I was like emotionally impacted? No, I see this as a challenge. This is going to be a challenge, and it's going to be an undertaking, and it's the rivalry that is born out of that moment that I think is going to be the sort of strung through story component for the rest of the season." And I have no problem with that. It's going to be really interesting to see how they go head to head, and as the other characters, Berezowska and Tchaikovsky and Bach, at some point, hopefully, they will get involved, how that will happen. And just, it kind of feels akin to me the first couple episodes of the first season, where things were a little wacky. There wasn't a through line as yet really highly perceivable, but one came across as the show went on. And so I'm wondering what the overall arc, what that thread will be to bear in this second season. But other than that, I mean, I enjoyed the hell out of this episode. I thought the whole thing with, the hippo wanting regular human food, even though everyone, for all intents and purposes, just considers him an animal, Dobokun, It's just like, and then you had Dobokun and Kanai's bird. They were just chilling in the sort of fountain on the front lawn of the property. They showed it 2 or 3 times, like they're just sitting together, and then like the bird's resting his beak on them and everything. I thought that was really cute. And then he's completely upset that he doesn't get the actual genuine food in the end. He just laments by like, loud growl or something. But yeah, I mean, this show, I love this show. It's a beloved modern age classic to me. No pun intended with the whole ClassicaLoid being in the title. I love that we had the original OP, and I loved all of the comedy and the humor, and it was really compelling to see how much of a chip on his shoulder he has. It very much harkened directly back to that more mysterious, enigmatic aspect of the creation of the ClassicaLoids, which was a constant question all through the first season. Now we see that he was an embodiment of that as well, but he was perchance an imperfected one. And so because he is imperfect, because he was, air quotes, botched, that is going to make him that much more aggressive in whatever he's trying to bring about, going up against Beethoven and the other ClassicaLoids. And that, to me, is utmost compelling. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 2 of ClassicaLoid Season 2. If you've seen it as well, if you were as stoked as I was that the OP music returns, and overall, what you thought about the episode. Love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below as long as we have a great conversation. And so yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much it for me on this. If this video finds you well, I'll catch you all later. Peace.